Anyone who takes a walk around Fayetteville, Arkansas will immediately take note of the natural beauty afforded to this area. The rolling hills, verdant trees, and scenic overlooks give the Ozarks something to really talk about. But there exists another ecosystem here in Fayetteville. Like the natural wonders I mentioned previously, if you take a walk around the city, you won't miss it. The ecosystem I'm talking about is colorful, diverse, awe-inspiring, and interestingly enough, man-made. Fayetteville, Arkansas serves a lot of purposes. For some, it's a home. For others, it's a place for academic pursuits. For many, it's a hub for SEC sports. But for the artists, Fayetteville serves as their canvas. However, defining public art gets tricky about halfway through. We know that the word public means something easily found in the open within our community. It's something that people both contribute to and own. Easy enough. But let's try to put a definition on art. Not so easy. Defining art, simply put, is an oxymoron. Art can be this, or that, maybe this, and probably that. So instead of defining art, we should look to the makers, the artists, the creators, to better understand these astounding pieces found all throughout Fayetteville. Their stories are intertwined with the recent history of this area, as Fayetteville's bustling arts culture hasn't been around for too long.
Well, Northwest Arkansas was much different when I moved here in 1976. It was really, in some ways, kind of wild, wild west, and there were just a lot of very creative people here. Fayetteville just had its own personality that was very, very different from anywhere else in Arkansas, I feel like. People could do anything that they wanted to do as long as they could make it happen. And people here were open to that. And there were also people who were supporting as much as they could the arts.
Kathy Thompson is a titan in Arkansas's art community. She began her work as a visual artist way back in 1976, and she has absolutely no interest in stopping. But how did Northwest Arkansas suddenly become a hub for creative minds? Well, back in the 70s, there was a growing trend amongst America's hippie population. The Back to the Land movement was a sparked interest for people to leave the bustling urban spaces in favor of a more natural setting. According to rough estimates made by local historians, somewhere between 2,000 to 6,000 people were influenced by this movement and decided to call the Ozarks their home. Many back-to-landers bought tracts of land in the area for an affordable cost.
I'm a son of a single mother, and her and my sister and I, we went all over the country, and we landed in Northwest Arkansas with the Back to the Land movement. The Back to the Landers were not quite the same as, the free love hippies. They were a little more serious. They actually had sort of a philosophy, and they were trying to get back to more honest roots. And so that came with all of these people who were trying to revitalize the skills, like, woodworking and animal husbandry and forestry. Definitely, building houses is part of that, because, the standard thing was to get 40 acres on a hillside and try to, build yourself a place and scratch out a living somehow.
Eugene Sargent still lives and works on the land that his mother bought, and he is one of the creative minds born through this unconventional movement. Stepping into Eugene's studio is like entering his mind. It might be a little scattered and unorganized, but damn does it look cool. His work can be found all around Fayetteville, and each piece perfectly reflects Eugene's unique mindset.
Put something odd out something that's odd and beautiful or weird or something out for people to see and think about, right? And respond to, you know. I mean, I think that's what artists live for.
Eugene picked up a lot of skills as a child of the Back to the Land movement. He's proficient in carpentry, welding, and metalwork. He's a true blue handyman. But one thing set him on the path of being a full-time artist.
I don't want a job.
Eugene prefers to use his skills to beautify Fayetteville, and if he ever got around to drafting a resume, it would be a long one, because even he cannot count how many projects he has worked on.
Yeah, the count was several hundred 20 years ago, so I'm sure it's over 1,000. Projects big and small. People love public art. I mean, it's amazing how much they respond to it. The neat thing about putting something in a park or something is so many people get to appreciate it for free, right? Whereas, you know, if I get commissioned to do something fancy in some rich person's house, nobody's gonna see it. And, you know, I've done that. But having a piece out in public is just so much more rewarding.
Eugene can attribute his skills to the lifestyle his family adopted as back-to-landers. Many Fayetteville creatives do the same. But another crucial building block in Fayetteville's art culture is just one man, and his name is similarly found on plaques found all throughout the city. Hank Kaminsky was a lifelong sculptor who moved from New York City to Arkansas during the early 70s. Hank and his wife Joanne worked hard to cultivate Northwest Arkansas's art culture.
Hank, I knew him sort of when he and Joanne lived in Eureka. They lived in Eureka Springs, and they made belt buckles and things out of brass, and they were, like everyone else, trying to make a living.
And so they were already established part of the art community in Northwest Arkansas. I needed some way to make a living, so I signed on with Hank as sort of a low-paid, you know, shop assistant or whatever. And it, you know, you could consider it an apprenticeship, although I was getting paid a little, but not very much. But the thing was that basically what I got was a classic education in all the sculptural arts.
Hank's ragtag bunch of artists could be classified as starving, but not just for food, for work.
So everything was mission critical. There was no fat to trim, right? And so we were always a little bit desperate, a little behind.
Hank and Joanne's efforts started a chain reaction throughout Fayetteville. As prospective artists began forming their own groups, more and more attention was given to the blooming Ozarks art scene.
I didn't grow up thinking I was going to be an artist, actually. After I got together with the other 4 women and established the ceramic cooperative, we got grants. What we were doing was very innovative. Everybody in Fayetteville wanted to know what we were doing. So I think that what happened with me is that I just fit into that world.
This community of artists prioritized finding opportunities for one another, helping each other out during tough times. And these artists showed each other gratitude in the best way they knew how to.
People always walk in my studio and go, "Where did you get that?" And I said, "Well, Eugene made that. Can't you tell?"
Hank was teaching his unconventional pupils in an unconventional time, in an unconventional region, and to top it all off, he taught them an unconventional method of sculpting.
We learned, you know, all these ancient processes.
Most contemporary sculptors prefer to directly manipulate the metal that they work with in order to create a sculpture, but this was not Hank's style. Hank instead taught many artists how to sculpt by using a method that was utilized over 4,000 years ago, investment casting. This requires the artist to create numerous molds of their sculpture in an attempt to create one that can hold molten metal. This allows for the finalized work to showcase more intricate details, and it is a staple of Hank's work here in Fayetteville. This method was utilized to make one of Hank's magnum opuses. The World Peace Prayer Fountain is Hank's most public art piece. Fixated in front of the town center, this massive brass sphere is a staple in the city of Fayetteville. Around 50 craftsmen worked on this installation over a 3-year period. Hank wanted this piece to emulate the earth itself. The imperfections are deliberate, and so are the reliefs. "May peace prevail on earth" is the phrase transcribed all around the surface of this installation, and Hank wanted it to be translated in over 100 languages, highlighting the universal desire for world peace. Hank hoped for the World Peace Prayer to have a meditative atmosphere around it, and he wanted the project to spark the community's interest in public art.
Hank's Peace Prayer Fountain. There are so many people who take it very personally, who go up and spin it every time they come to the farmer's market. He used to just sit by it and just watch people connect with it. Not know who he was, but just watch it give what it could give to people. And I don't think we can underestimate the effect of art on all of us.
Since the 70s, Hank Kaminsky was meticulously molding Northwest Arkansas's art culture, and the impact can be seen today. Throw a stone in Fayetteville and you're bound to hit a mural or sculpture that would not have existed without the presence of Hank Kaminsky. And after Hank's passing in March of 2023, the Northwest Arkansas community came together on Mount Sequoia to honor his legacy. But let's remember that his achievements were not done alone.
Okay, my name's Joanne Kaminsky, and I am an artist, an art therapist, a puppeteer. I wear a lot of hats, and a counselor. Well, it's true, any artist would know another artist, but we met in Eureka Springs, which is even smaller, but a larger amount of artists per capita. I was working as a potter at that time, and his work was being sold in the gallery. He was making bronze bells, and I was doing pottery, and I knew his name before I knew him. And then we were in a figure drawing session together, and then they were creating the Cultural Affairs Committee, and it was all around art, but it was all in different ways. And at that point, he was casting small things. He called himself a craftsperson, but he also said, "I'm a sculptor, and I want to do bigger things." Well, actually, I knew he was the person for me. So we built a house in Eureka Springs, had a couple of kids, but then he wanted to go back to school, and we eventually moved over here and became part of this community. So he started in that way of, I'm going to help these people know how to do this and have a chance to stretch my creative wings too. Many of them were artists who had their own work that he would critique and talk to them about and encourage and network with someone else, and that kind of thing was really obvious to me. Other people came up and said, I struggled with anxiety, and he just was always encouraging me, or different inner struggles that people had. It just seemed like he drew people to him who just needed that little bit of extra, which we all do, but he was always willing to give that.
I went off on my own, but I didn't actually go that far. I moved just down the street. And then we actually sort of became friends. And so then I could appreciate him more just as the amazing artist that he actually was. And, over the years, we really got to appreciate each other, I think.
Could you kind of sort of elaborate a little bit on that memorial and just kind of like the words that people would say about Hank and what really made you realize like this larger impact? I mean, he kind of is the foundation, I've come to find, of the art scene here in Northwest Arkansas.
Well, it was an overwhelming number of people to begin with, and people were saying, well, this is the who's who of artists in this room right now. And a lot of folks came over from Eureka who had known him when he first came. He taught them how to sculpt those forms the way he wanted them to say what he wanted to say. So as opposed to the way I was talking about doing community work, this was a different kind of community work. But as our community builds, we will be more able to do that support for each other and help each other on that path. Funding is always a problem for Arkansas in just about any direction you want to go.
The city of Fayetteville recognizes that good public art is an investment, one that could have major benefits both economically and socially. Whether it's in tourism or overall quality of life, public art gives vitality towards ambitious cities such as Fayetteville. So a committee comprised of artists and bureaucrats alike was formed, one that's main goal is to encourage and enhance our local arts culture. The Fayetteville Arts Council. This group works tirelessly to secure funding for public art, and with 3 major companies fixated in Northwest Arkansas, it mainly comes down to how convincing they can be.
You know, there are a lot of towns that would never consider having public art, first of all, or paying for public art. I mean, that's what you have to do. I mean, obviously we live in a community that has a lot of dollars out there. So it just depends on how they spend those dollars.
There are grants out there, and we're collecting people who know about that. And the Arts Council doesn't have a whole lot of money, but they know how to direct it and they know how to use what they do have.
Everything has to work in with the system. So if you're patient and you get things rolling in the system, things will happen.
It's a slow process. Sometimes you don't have to convince anyone that they need to do these things, but a city, it's just a process.
The road to getting a public art piece approved sure is a long one. Just this past year, the Fayetteville Arts Council broke ground on a project that has been 20 years in the making. What is the purpose of this project, you might ask? To honor the legacy of Hank Kaminsky by installing his final piece. Before his passing, Hank Kaminsky got approval to construct an ambitious project akin to the World Peace Prayer Fountain. This concrete sculpture wanted to deliver another universal theme, one that praises the divinity of the land that we live on. And after his passing, Hank's work lived on, as Eugene took up the responsibility of finalizing his mentor's posthumous sculpture.
This sculpture is really kind of a masterpiece, but it was just in plaster, and which is a fragile, very non-permanent thing that, has to be dealt with.
The relief reads, "You are standing on sacred ground." And like the World Peace Prayer, it can be read in a number of languages.
Hank's idea was that all of the earth is sacred. The piece itself was meant to look like the words are just pushing up out of the earth. That if we pay attention to the earth, we'll learn. And that it all needs to be treated as sacred. So it's not that this one place is sacred and this one is not. It's that it's all sacred. I like how Eugene talks about that piece because he said it's a primer for Hank's technique. He loved techniques. So as much as he loved abstract ideas, he also loved his craft. and they both went hand in hand. And he had ways of creating these marks in sand. You might look at it and say, oh, it looks a little rough here, it looks a little unfinished here. That's exactly what he wanted. And so it has the roughness of the Ozarks. It has the images of the rocks. And it just feels like it grew out of here. It's just a part of it. And he became a part of here too. So he said, I moved to a foreign country and married a native, but he sure did love it. And I'm happy that he stayed and he left his work.
Hank succeeded in providing Fayetteville's arts culture with a rock-solid foundation, one rooted in the very history of this area. Public art is undoubtedly magnetic, and it shows. People are moving to Northwest Arkansas by the droves. This area is poised to break numerous population records in the coming years. So with the cost of goods and housing on the rise, people need an escape. The demand for public art is at an all-time high. And the artists I spoke to say Hank's work is never going to be finished, as there will always be a new generation of artists looking to carve their mark on the Fayetteville and Northwest Arkansas community at large.
So, I mean, all I know is that if you want to be an artist, jump in there. I say go for it. You know, I'm all for artists doing what they want to do. And then if the funding goes away and it's different, and then that's going to happen too. You know, and you can't really predict that. So you might as well take advantage of what's here right now. That's the way I look at it. And I encourage everyone to do that.
Yeah, it's funny, you know, I tell people jokingly that I've never had a real job, which is basically true. But what that means is that I've done 1,000 jobs, probably more. So I think that's what makes an artist, is someone who doesn't just want to, you know, follow the script, I guess, and someone who explores, you know. So I like to explore, you know, each different thing and each different step in each process. And so then a creation becomes sort of an adventure where you are going down the rabbit holes and figuring out what it takes to solve all these unique and individual problems.
Right now I'm creating a puppet show that is really going to be about my last year, and it's going to be a way I am processing the death of my husband Hank and what life is like now. As an art therapist, I think it would be silly for me not to use art in that kind of process. And I love to help other people do that. I have an art therapy group with teenage girls right now. When it's done, we're going to have another group with all teens, any teen. And that's one of my passions too, is using art to help people express and process and understand and overcome barriers and work like that.
Artist, what is that good for? If I had to say one thing, and I think the public art, it's about quality of life. And parks and public art is the meeting space for all the people in the area. And it's something sort of magic that happens when, you know, you have the public space. It's free. People don't, they're being themselves and they're all meeting, and so to me it's about investing in the quality of life of this area and just keep on making it a great place to live.